No, right? I don't even want to say the next thing that I want to say, right? It is an absolute... We would look at that and we would say that is a barbaric country. What the hell has happened, Richard Tice, to the United Kingdom I grew up being proud of? It's awful.
Well, I'm afraid to say, Jeremy, the first thing is that I fear that some of this horrific activity is still going on. Yeah. What we don't know is where. And it has been going on for decades, and there has been a gutless cowardice because of, all to do with DEI, actually. You know, we had multiculturalism forced down our throats, and anybody who wanted to question it was automatically smeared and labelled and cancelled as a racist bigot. And so these are the direct consequences of that. That thirst and hunger by Tony Blair's lot for multiculturalism has directly led to this appalling catastrophe. But I stood up in the chamber today and I said that, sure, the victims and survivors want action now on the recommendations and what we know, but also in many towns up and down the country, most of them, I think, Labour-led in terms of who's leading the council, there are victims and survivors who've not yet got answers. And that's why we need a national, dedicated, specific child rape and grooming gang inquiry to ask the difficult questions, to compel people to come and answer those questions. The problem with a local inquiry is that you haven't got that degree of compulsion. And I'm hearing from a number of people that there have been whitewashes, there have been cover-ups, there have been witnesses who basically have been silenced.
Did you hear my last call? Did you hear my last caller?
I heard, yes, various callers.
I mean, I mean, the guy from Lancashire, his daughter, groomed in Oldham.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
So she's 13, 20 years ago. He doesn't know he's working all round the clock to pay for his kids to go to private school. He's a good man. You can hear it in his voice 20 years later. A group of Muslim men grooming her from Oldham. It comes out. They've raped her. He goes to the police. I mean, this is an honest man. And we'll play the call. It's going to go viral. He said they told him, we can't do anything about it. It'll be seen as racist. Now, actually, we're going to play a clip to you, Richard Tice. As the leader of Reform, have a listen, as the deputy leader, have a listen to this. Play it now, please.
My daughter was gang raped. Pakistani Muslims from Oldham. They travelled 18 miles to my town to get to my daughter. When I found out, I phoned the police up. Now, this had been going on for a few weeks and I didn't know, because I used to work 100 hours a week to pay for my kids to go to private school. And when I found out, I phoned the police up. Police constable come, 2 of them, basically told them what has been going on, told me to let it go, otherwise I will get arrested for being racist.
Richard Tice.
I mean, you know, we just weep listening to it, but in all seriousness, what I want to know is whether that father, whether he has, you know, in a sense, what's happened. Has he been able to speak to any of these inquiries? Has his complaint been properly dealt with? And if the answer to that is no, then I regret to say that proves my very point, and it proves the concern of tens of millions of British people. And there is no excuse whatsoever. And all these people who are saying, well, we've had inquiries, we know what needs to be done. I'm sorry, we don't. And
well, the inquiry, to be fair, that was had. Let's be perfectly honest. Only one victim was allowed to speak at it. This should be. This should be about the victim, shouldn't it?
There is a great deal of deliberate misinformation about this and misleading. The Professor J inquiry that came out 2 years ago was an overarching inquiry. Grooming gangs and Rotherham was only mentioned once. Okay, so we haven't got the answers. We don't know which towns this is still happening in, and we should be able, in this country of ours that we think is great, we should be able to do 2 things at once. Yes, carry out the urgent actions required to stop this vile activity and to bring to justice those who've committed heinous crimes. But secondly, in parallel, we need to run an ongoing inquiry in all these different towns to find out the absolute truth.
Right, let me ask you this, because I'm very interested to hear a politician always being as upfront as you are. You said national inquiry. You talked then about individual towns. One of the suggestions earlier was from several callers, which I think is really, really important. And you, as somebody who was appalled as Nigel was, as many of us were, about what happened at Manchester Airport and how long it took for the Director of Public Prosecutions to charge those two Muslim men who had attacked the police officers, who were suspended quite rightly before I get accused of things, but there was no balance. One of the things that one caller said to me earlier, which I think is really relevant here, is the police are crap at marking their own homework. This needs to be somebody almost outside our country, or outside the remit of police, social...
Everybody is bad at marking their own homework.
Well, it needs to be somebody outside, shouldn't it?
So, of course, it needs to be genuinely independent.
Yeah.
And there are real concerns about that. But here's the thing. We have said that if the government won't hold an independent inquiry, we, Reform UK, rather like we did with the thugs in Manchester Airport, we forced the CPS finally to charge those two individuals. I want to call them thugs, but someone will probably tell me off. But anyway,
I'll call them thugs. Tell me off then, whatever.
But so we've done that, and if the government won't hold this inquiry, then we at Reform UK, we will organise it, we will sort it. We'll give the government probably until the end of January to get their act together. And I think that I sense that the government is beginning to move.
Well, Jess Phillips today said, didn't she? She said, we won't rule out a new national inquiry if enough victims seem to want it. That's what she said this afternoon.
Well, and I think the Prime Minister was a great deal more measured about this issue in Prime Minister's questions today than when he gave that ridiculous speech accusing anybody who wanted a national inquiry as basically being part of the far right. I think he's realised, someone's told him, had a word in his shell-like ear, that they're completely out of step with the public mood. So expect in the next few days a shift in the government's position. And if they don't shift, we're going to shift it for them, because Reform UK will organise and hold our own independent inquiry. We know we can raise the money. We know we can sort it. It can happen in a prompt, rapid time frame. I said in the chamber today, we should be able to organise this with enough people, enough things going on in parallel in different towns. We could sort this in a year.
How did that go? How did that go down in the chamber? Do they just think you're a bunch of stirrers? Do they? What was their response?
No, I think in fairness, people gave me the courtesy of listening, and they know that I'm a man of action and have got a track record of getting things done. So let's see.
Have any Labour MPs spoken to you about their frustration at being told how they're to vote, and that they, privately, of course, you couldn't give away that information, that they would welcome an inquiry and go against what Keir Starmer thinks?
I've not specifically had that, but what I do know is that they will be getting emails in their inbox from their constituents as we speak, and over the course of the next few days, saying, what on earth are you playing at? Particularly when at 7 o'clock tonight, they go through the no lobby and vote against the reasoned amendment by the opposition to have this inquiry. And I think that will be a stain on their individual characters and voting records. It's a 3-line whip, I understand, from the Prime Minister.
Yeah, it is.
So that's going to be there, indelibly marked on their characters for forever.
And that's a really important point, because I'm writing a book, and whilst researching the book, it's absolutely true that it's on public record how your MP votes. I'm not going into why I know that, but it will forever be there. Can I put something to you as well? Keir Starmer is quite possibly the least popular Prime Minister we've ever had, and we had Liz Truss, which has got to be pretty bad. And you keep thinking, if you're me, there's got to be a moment when you listen to the right people or do something that garners a little bit of an uplift. Surely this was his moment to say, yes, I believe there should be an inquiry. By saying no, everybody's picking up on being when he was in charge of prosecutions, the Director of Public Prosecutions, has he got something to hide? Is he part of this entire establishment?
Yeah.
But no, I was just going to say, the bigger issue surely for Keir Starmer is that he lost 5 seats in the last election to Muslim independent candidates who stood up and purely talked about Gaza. And is he frightened that he'll lose his majority of seats north of Watford Gap if he dares to stand up and address an issue that, as you rightly say in Reform, affects millions of people in this country? That's what I think.
I think they are terrified of losing seats to an element, not all, let's be very clear, an element of the Muslim vote. And there's another thing that happened in Prime Minister's questions today, which is related to Keir Starmer and what I think was a woeful performance as Director of Public Prosecutions, because a Conservative MP stood up and said to him, why did he do nothing when the case of Mohammed al-Fayed and the allegations against him came up? Lots of people knew about it when he was DPP. And extraordinarily, he said, it never came across my desk. So he's very happy when something doesn't suit to say that not on my watch, Gov, didn't come across my desk.
Do you remember, and I know he's not your favourite person at all, but do you remember when Boris Johnson, who quite rightly got slated for Partygate, who probably lost the premiership of this country when the Queen was sat on her own and he was apparently having a party, whether he was at it or not. But I remember him quite rightly standing up and saying, it's a bit rich, Mr Starmer or Sir Keir or whatever, that you're telling me that I was in charge of all of this, and as the man I'm responsible, you were in charge, you were the Director of Public Prosecutions when Jimmy Savile avoided prosecution, and he said exactly the same thing, Starmer. It didn't cross my desk. Sir Keir Starmer will always say that because he's alive.
Yeah,
the British people are on to Sir Keir Starmer, Richard, without any shadow of a doubt.
He will never take responsibility
never.
When things have gone wrong on his watch. It's always, just blame someone else or blame it. If you disagree with him, then basically you're on the fringe of the far right. That's his sort of standard smearing and labelling, and I think he is showing himself up to be the worst Prime Minister by some margin that any of us can ever remember.
Before I ask you one final question, I have to ask you this as well. The fallout between Elon Musk, and I thought Nigel quite rightly saying we're not having Tommy Robinson. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but Tommy Robinson is not everybody's cup of tea. Nigel's been quite strong about that. Were you shocked by Musk? And I have to ask you this. We're friends, but I've also a job to do. Is that what you get? Do you get your fingers burnt when you play with people as eccentric and as up as down as somebody like Elon Musk?
We're crystal clear. Mr. Musk is a brilliant entrepreneur. I love his products, but life would be boring if you agreed with your friends on everything. Yep. On this particular issue, we're absolutely clear. We disagree with Mr. Musk. We always said that if you wanted to donate and it was legal, then that's fine, but it comes without conditions. We're not going to sell our convictions and our principles, which we hold very strong, very dear, seared on our heart. Those are not available to be sold to anybody. And so that's the position. I gave my clear views about Mr. Robinson back at the end of October, and lots of people liked it and some people didn't. Well, that's the nature of politics. But I will repeat it just so everybody understands. We are a serious political party looking to win the next general election, and Mr. Robinson has nothing to do with this, will never have anything to do with us, and that is the end of that.
It's interesting because, it's interesting what you said about your response. I've had people say to me, oh, that's a big mistake. I've had more people say to me, that was prime ministerial. That was putting your foot down and being the leader that Farage needs to be. I'm not throwing this at you. Tell me if you don't want to comment. I don't know how long ago did this happen? 20 minutes ago, Howard Cox has tweeted. Do you know about this, Richard?
I don't, so...
Howard Cox has tweeted that he's leaving Reform UK in an ex-post. He said he wants to talk about political issues without criticism. If you aren't ready, that's your choice, my friend. I just wondered whether there was a response from you to that.
I wasn't aware of that, and I'm sad to see Howard go. He and I have worked very closely over the... first of all, the London mayoral campaign and then the general election campaign. But he's taken a different stance on, I think, this Robinson issue. And so, in a sense, we just agree to disagree. And it's as simple as that. And,
which is politics for you. I will say
that's the nature of it.
I will say one thing, right? I mean, he one of his criticisms. I mean, one of the questions would be: are members of Reform UK, as you want to quite rightly give the impression, there were criticisms in the last election you weren't prepared. Are they being gagged? Are they being told what they can and can't talk about? Would that be a justifiable question?
Exactly the opposite. The point about Howard there is that that's what democracy and free speech is all about. Howard wants to talk about certain issues. He knows that if it's about that and it doesn't describe with our values, then he's going to have to do that from out with, because we're not going to tolerate that from within. It's as simple as that. But that's the joy of democracy.
In terms of people, final question, there is undoubtedly a feeling in the United Kingdom that this government, as you quite rightly said, is potentially the worst on record, that this man is out of his depth, that socialism will finally die in the next 4.5 years, and anybody with a brain cell will work out that it actually doesn't work. A Tory party that is a busted flush by anybody's sort of description, Richard, a Tory party that, despite what they say, millions of people in this country seemingly can't forgive for a long, long time. It seems to many people that Reform UK is the party that will benefit from that. I said something the other day which I was desperate to put to you and you weren't able to come on. I don't believe that you will be the next government, just hear me out, but I believe you will win a large number of seats and potentially hold the balance of power, which is pretty phenomenal when you consider that you will at that point be 6 years old. Is the dream to just get more and more seats? Is the dream to be the next government, or is the dream to see where this goes? And in terms of what the British people want, what are you feeling in the country with the British people as this almost crusade, if you like, gathers pace?
Well, dream is the wrong word, Jeremy. There's no point dreaming. We need to act. And we have a serious plan and a serious objective, and it's to way outperform your rather gloomy predictions. We are not mucking about. And yes, of course, you've got to be optimistic, and you might say it's overly ambitious. Well, we are ambitious, and we plan to form the next government, and the best way of doing that is to have a majority. And I tell you what, we are in for a tough time. As we speak, the financial markets are expressing their genuine concern about the state of the British economy, about what's happening after the blunder budget of all blunder budgets. And we are heading towards a recession. We are getting poorer by the day, by the week, by the month. And if that continues, people don't re-elect a government that's made them poorer. And people won't forgive or forget what the Conservatives did to this country, allowing mass, open-door, unskilled immigration that has caused unbelievable financial, cultural and social harm and damage. And I think people will say, enough's enough. Let's let reform come in, root and branch reform of the way everything works, and we will sort this out. We will fix it.
I have to say, though, in my defence, you had my vote last time, you'll have it next time. My gloomy prediction is because I'm a pessimist. I would like nothing more than all of those idiots to be removed and reform to be where it rightfully should be. Richard, thank you, sir. And I'm sorry, do you want to tell me off now about the Isabel thing or not?
No. We're having way too good a discussion.
I'm slightly concerned that you're going to ring me up and tell me off. Thank you so much indeed as ever. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK and